Shalom everyone. The Gemara in Bava Batra, page Peichet 88, is bringing a baraita describing a person that goes to the market and he selects some fruit and he puts them aside and he goes back and he returns and he can't make up his mind whether he wants to buy them or not. If he had a thought that he will buy them, he is obligated in ma'asel. And the Gemara asks about this surprising baraita, and I'm sharing the sources, and let's see the question. And the Gemara asks, what do you mean he needs to give tithe? Is that to say that because one determined to buy the produce, even though he says nothing and perform no act of acquisition, he acquires the produce and become obligate in tithe? Rav Hoshaya said, here we are dealing with a buyer who is a God-fearing, such as Rav Safra. In other words, the Gemara says, yes, you're right. We know that dvarim shebalev enam dvarim, thoughts that we have are not actions. So usually when someone is going to the market and thinking to buy something, it didn't really buy the thing because dvarim shebalev enam dvarim. But, says Rav Hoshaya, that specific baraita speaks about a God-fearing person. A God-fearing person is being expected to behave on a higher ethical level, which is beyond the written words. And he's bringing an example of Safra. He says, as Rav Safra, who himself fulfilled the verse and speaks truth in his heart. Okay, it's a beautiful pasuk. V'dover emet bilvavo. You want to know who is a God-fearing person? A God-fearing person is the one who speaks truth in his heart, like Rav Safra. And the story with Rav Safra, it's not in our Gemara, but I'll tell the story. Rav Safra was in the middle of Kriyat Shema, and someone came to buy his donkey, and he offers Rav Safra an amount of money. Now Rav Safra didn't speak, but when the person said, let's say 100 shekels, Rav Safra said, yes, it's fine. That person saw that Rav Safra doesn't answer, and he says, "Okay, I'll give you 150. I'll give you 200." Rav Safra finished Kriyat Shema. He turned to the person and he says, "Give me the 100 because when you said 100, I agreed in my heart to sell you the donkey for 100." That is speaks truth in his heart. Another example we find in Bava Batra. And the Gemara in Bava Batra relates to a buyer who gave money to Rav Kahana to purchase linen. Ultimately, the price of linen increased, and Rav Kahana came before Rav because he didn't know what to do. Like he promised linen, to the amount of the X money that he was given, but now that it's increased, he needs to give less linen. But is it the right thing to do? Okay, he wants to be a God-fearing person. So he comes before Rav and he asks him his opinion. And Rav said to him, give him the quantity of linen equivalent in value to the money that you received. And concerning the rest, your verbal commitment is merely a statement. Again, it's only dvarim. And dvarim shebalev enam dvarim, you agreed to give him the linen, but you did not say anything about increase, not increase. So therefore, it's okay not to give him more linen. And and concern and in the value that the money that you received, and concerning the rest, your verbal commitment is merely a statement, and reneging on a verbal commitment that was unaccompanied by an act of acquisition does not constitute an act of bad faith. In other words, Rav knew that Rav Kahana is feeling that maybe it's a bad faith and he wants to be a God-fearing person. Maybe he should give that person more linen as the old price. And Rav tells him, no, it's fine, it's okay. It's not that you change your mind. You said you're going to give him linen. The price came up. It's not an act of bad faith. But the Gemara comments that this is, as was stated, there is an Amoraic dispute with regarding to reneging on a verbal commitment that was unaccompanied by an act of acquisition. Rav says it does not constitute an act of bad faith, But Rabbi Yochanan says it constitutes an act of bad faith. So we hear that the Amoraim, Rav in Bavel, Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Israel, they're dealing with what is a God-fearing person, what is a bad faith, even if it's not concerning the written law, the thin line of what you need to do and what you not need to do. But there are other things that if you do them or not do them, it's not only that it's not doesn't look good, but it's not the wholesome person who is a God-fearing person who is expected to act on a higher moral level than the common people. We see in the Rambam, lahalacha, in Hilchot Maasrot, the Rambam says that if a potential purchaser was selecting and setting aside, even if he did not, even if he did so the entire day, and even if he made up his mind to purchase the produce, he is not obligated to tithe it. If he is a God-fearing person, from the time he made up his mind, he should tithe it. In other words, Rambam again agrees, like there's what's the norm of the law from the majority of people. But a God-fearing person should be honest. And if he had a thought of what he wants to do, he needs to act on what his thought was, to be speaking truth in his heart. And that verse in Tehillim Perek Vav is a beautiful verse. Holech tamim u'poel tzedek v'dover emet bilvavo. He who lives without blame, who does what is right, and in his heart acknowledges the truth. In other words, we're not talking here about people who fulfill the halacha. We're talking here about people that carry their image of God in them, in a higher level of behavior, of human behavior. And Ibn Ezra is saying, Po'el tzedek im chaverav, with his friends. In other words, it's not olech tamim with God. It's not Po'el tzedek with God. It's not dover emet bilvavo with God. Of course, if I lie, God knows. But it is those actions that I do in society with fellow people, and that this extra thing makes someone even if it's not a requirement halachically. But there is an expectation, and people can be God-fearing people that are acting on lifnim meshurat adin, that extra behavior that is not written in the Torah, but is hints in the Torah and in the Nevi'im and in the Ketuvim, that certain behavior is fitting to a God-fearing person, and certain behavior can lead you to bad faith, as we saw before. The Malbim says about Dover Emet Bilvavo that he speaks the truth in his heart, that his faith should not be from the tongue to the outside, because the fence of faith is the agreement of the heart with what he puts out with his lips. In other words, says the Malbim, someone that is getting used to not have his thoughts and words in a line and the agreement with the heart, ultimately can stop being a God-fearing person. And that's the fence. You want to make sure that you're in that area of God-fearing person. It's that, not, checklist of halacha, but the agreement of a heart with what he puts out with his lips. Midrash Tehillim, very surprisingly, is asking itself, okay, do we know people like that? So the first attempt is, who are he who walks uprightly and works righteousness? He who walks uprightly is the Holy One, blessed be He. As it says, the rock, his work is perfect. Ken Hashem tzuri tamim poalo. And he who works in righteousness is the Holy One, blessed be He. As it says, for the Lord is righteous. He who loves righteous deed. And he who speaks truth is the Holy One, blessed be He. As it is said, but the Lord is the true God. Very surprising when the Midrash is coming to ask, do we know people like that? They don't bring people. They said, oh, it's God. God is all those things. Now we can hear it as God is all those things. Therefore, we must follow God's footsteps. Okay, these are all attributes that we look together like, if God is like that, I can be like that. But that can be also frightening. Like, if God is that, how can I be that? So the Midrash continues to say, we also know people like that. Who are they? Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Another thing is to be innocent. This refers to Abraham, as it says, walk before me and be innocent. And to do righteous, this is Yitzchak, whose actions were righteous and who gave his life for the God. And to speak truth, this is Yaakov, as it is said, you will give truth to Yaakov, you will not lie to him. כן, תיתן אמת Yaakov. Now, okay, so our forefathers were great people. We know that. Can we be great people? So first of all, yes, these are examples, personal examples that we need to follow. But what we find in the tractate of Makot, when they speak about this finding out the people, so the Gemara in Makot is saying Holech Tamim ze Avraham. Okay, so he who walks wholeheartedly, this is referring to one who conducts himself like our forefathers, like Abraham, as it is written in concern of Abraham, walk before me and be wholehearted. We saw that in the Midrash. Who is Poel Tzedek? Who works righteousness? This is referring to one such as Abba Chilkiyahu. In other words, we're not only talking about our forefathers, we also knew people in our own time, says the Chachamim. Abba Chilkiyahu is a grandchild of Chonia Me'agel. So it's Chachamim from the time of the Beit Sheni, time of Mishnah. We know people like that. It's possible for people to be like that. What did he do to be a Poel Tzedek? And here it's a nice play on words, because a laborer who would not pause from his labor, he had to work for his parnasa. He was a poel, a laborer, and never paused from his labor, even to greet people. And he righteously continued working. In other words, if he works for somebody, he can't waste his time, because his work is somebody else's money. That's Poel Tzedek. And Dover Amed V'Vavo is our Rav Safra that we heard his story. And the Gemara here mentions him again. In other words, it's God, but it shouldn't weaken us, because we need mag afhu afatag. If God is, this is the acts of God, that means we can do the same, because we have Tzelem Elokim. These are the actions of our forefathers. Yes, they are our example. You want to hear people that closer to your time? Here you have Abba Chilkiah and you have Rav Safra, that are acting in a way that is respecting their God-fearing position. Rabbeinu B'Chaye Ibn Pakuda, in his famous book Chovot HaLevavot, The Duty of the Hearts, it's after Rav Seadia Gaon Emunot V'Deot, it's the second Jewish philosophy book, together with the Kuzari. So in Rabbeinu B'Chaye Ibn Pakuda, in the introduction, is telling us that you should realize that the aim and value of the duties of the heart is that our exterior and interior be equal and consistent in the service of God, so that the testimony of the heart, tongue, and limbs be alike, and that they support and confirm each other instead of differing and contradicting each other. I think that's very straightforward, what he states as being expected from a person who wants to live in a higher way, in a higher moral way. Rabbeinu Avraham ibn Ezra, which we know as a Torah commentator, also wrote a philosophy book called Yesod Morah V'Sod Torah. And there Ibn Ezra is saying, now behold, all the mitzvot can be categorized into three ways. Firstly, through belief in the heart. Secondly, through speech. And thirdly, through action. Each mitzvah is fundamentally based on one of these aspects. But if a mitzvah is depend on speech or action, it still requires belief in the heart. In other words, speak and action also needs to have the belief in the heart. You can have a belief in the heart as itself, but if you have speech or action, it also must be aligned with what you believe in, what you think in your heart. And without it, everything is in vain and futile. And Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and we'll end with that in Baal Yosinat Yesharim, is saying the following. He's quoting the prophet Zechariah, and he says, and Zechariah said, "And I have returned to Zion and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth." And says Aramchal, Yerushalayim is going to be the city of truth to magnify its importance. And our sages, of blessed memory, said, and he quotes the tractate that we saw in Makot, who he speaks truth in his heart, like Rav Safra, to teach you just how far-reaching the obligation of truth extends. In other words, if we want the city of Yerushalayim to be the city of truth, people should start acting in a truthful way also in their heart. And he mentioned something we saw before in previous tractates. The sages forbade a Torah scholar to alter his words, except for three things. There are only three things that you can change your word, but if you're a Talmid Chacham, or if you're a God-fearing person, you should never say words of lying or words that are outside, not what you think inside. And he ends by saying, truth is one of the pillars upon which the world stands. Therefore, one who speaks falsehood is as if he removed the foundations of the world. And conversely, one who is scrupulous on the truth, it is as if he upholds the foundations of the world. So we should be blessed by being able to be truthful inside and out.